Which conference is the better value to win the college football playoff? The SEC at -115 or the Big Ten at +110?
I'm going to go with the SEC here, roll with the SEC bias. I just think they're going to get a number of good teams in this situation. And you look at the rules, you're going to have a number of those teams not be favored or not be, in spots where they're favored on the bracket. And I think that's what's key here. I think they're going to be in advantageous spots overall. So when I look at this spot here, I think it's really the SEC. I know that you've got Ohio State and Oregon really strong in the Big Ten. I don't think Indiana's a threat. I don't even think they're going to be in the college football playoff. So when I look at this particular spot, I think it's the SEC.
Mine is also the Southeastern Conference, but this is a very recent development for me that has tipped the scales, because while we haven't seen the point spread move a lot, we've seen the total drop a little. To me, Ohio State losing starting center Seth McLaughlin for the year with an Achilles injury, their third major offensive line injury that they've had in terms of the group right now, the fourth major change that they've had to make to that offensive line this season, that makes me hesitant towards backing Ohio State. No, I call it my starting five. I'm trying to figure out who the five teams are that I'm going to take and say I could see one of these teams winning the national championship. I had Ohio State and Oregon on my starting five. I am taking Ohio State off. I think that those injuries on the offensive line would prevent the Buckeyes from winning consecutive games against the best teams in the country, especially when so many of those playoff teams have excellent defensive lines. So Ohio State's injury issues in the trenches, the deal breaker for me that had me leaning SEC.
Listen, I'm going to go Big Ten. And the reason why is because when you look at the quarterbacks in the Big Ten, they're better than the SEC quarterbacks, sans Jalen Milroe. But with Milroe in Alabama, you don't know which Bama team you're going to get. At least we know with Ohio State, we have the defensive line, tremendous pass rushers. We have the secondary. We have great receivers. We know with Oregon, probably the most complete team on both sides of the ball, and they have the better quarterback. And at least with Ole Miss, you have Quinshon Judkins. I mean, wait. He plays for Ohio State now. They have both the backs. Penn State has good backs, good defense, a good quarterback. If you're telling me I have to choose between the Big Ten and the narrative of the SEC, oh my God, take the SEC 10 times out of 10. But if this is about football, this year, the Big Ten, pound for pound, has the better talent because for the most part, they have better quarterback play.
Emery, you're already coming out hot, and we're not even onto our second question. Chip, next man up. Come on. I understand McLaughlin's a big deal. Next man up. But Mike, I got to ask you, you said Indiana is not going to make the playoff, potentially at 11-1. Are you standing by that?
Absolutely. Yeah, they get blown out by 3 scores this week. They're out, which is back to your question. I think Penn State has zero chance of winning the national title against good teams having to win consecutive games. That's why I went SEC, because there's only 2 teams from the Big Ten in the dance, in my opinion, Ohio State and Oregon. SEC, I think we have 4, and I think those 4 all could be of that caliber.
Fair enough. Let's go to number 2 here. Speaking of the SEC, let's talk about South Carolina, as they are the highest ranked 3-loss team. They're plus 3,000, so 30-1 to make the college football playoff. Is there any scenario in which they can make the CFP? Emery, start with you.
No, we've reached good loss season. When we saw the pile up, who lost good? Like, no, man, you got to keep winning. That's the whole point of it. If you are a good team, you keep winning. You don't lose. Good teams don't find a way to lose, right? And that's why we have a cutoff mark for these teams that are going to be in the postseason. So as good as South Carolina is playing, they should have won those games against LSU and other teams that they lost to, because at the end of the day, they would probably give the SEC, in my opinion, a better chance to go through coast to coast than some of the teams that we're going to put in the college football playoffs from that conference.
Yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. So I'm looking at South Carolina, and I am seeing a team that I think is very feisty, a team that I am excited to see how they compete in Death Valley against Clemson in a rivalry that means so much to those programs. But do I see a college football playoff team? No, I do not see a college football playoff team. 11-1 Indiana with a margin of whatever you want. is going to make the college football playoff before South Carolina does. There are too many teams in the way. There are Big 12 teams in the way. There are ACC teams in the way. Notre Dame is still very much in the picture. I just see too many teams that South Carolina would have to jump ahead of and not enough games left on the schedule.
Yeah, look, it's a clear no. You can add another zero, maybe two more zeros behind it, and I would still elect for my favorite 501c3 organization to make that donation. There's no shot that this team gets in. Again, first of all, they're going to lose to Clemson, but second of all, there's no way any three-loss team gets in unless it's the loser of the SEC title game, and that's not going to be South Carolina.
Oh man, Mike, you are hard set on this one, but I have a scenario for you guys. Just play along with me here. We got South Carolina winning out, including over Clemson. Notre Dame beats Army this week. They knock them out. The Big 12, let's say BYU wins out and wins the Big 12 with one loss. Colorado and ASU have 3 losses. Miami loses to Syracuse in the final week and SMU. They have 3 losses. A&M loses to Texas next week. They have 3 losses. And then 2 of these 4 happen. Florida over Ole Miss, Vandy over Tennessee, Auburn over Alabama, Georgia Tech over Georgia. Not likely, but the way I asked it, was there any scenario? If this happens, tell me, Chip, how does South Carolina not get in this scenario?
I think it's that very last 2 that you've got right there. It's the scenario that comes up, 404 system error. That's what I'm going to call this scenario. I always like to name my scenarios. This one is a take out the cartridge and blow on it and put it back in. So yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have necessarily the right fix for this. I think EC, I might need to unplug you and plug you back in. I think that's what we got right now, because when you got Alabama losing to this Auburn team, which might not be a bowl team, and when you've got Georgia losing to Georgia Tech, given the way that series has been under Kirby Smart, if that's what it's going to take, well then, I mean, we're talking about something biblical out here.
And listen, if that happens, I would say Colorado, BYU, and Tulane gets in before South Carolina.
Yeah.
Come on, Emory. No, we're not going with that. A 3-loss South Carolina from the SEC will get in over a 3-loss Colorado. All right, number 3 here. Which team would be more deserving of a first-round college football playoff bye? The Big 12 champion or a 1-loss Boise State or undefeated Army team? Chip, we'll start with you.
Whoever's ranked higher. I mean, here. So the way that the college football playoff works is that you come up with the rankings, and then you look in the rankings and you find the top 4 conference champions, and those teams get a first-round bye. So as you are trying to dissect the resumes of these 2 teams, your undefeated Army and your 1-loss Boise State, what is your statistical profile? What is your strength of schedule? What are your wins? I tell you what, the undefeated Army is very interesting, because that would give an opportunity for Army to actually get in this conversation. Right now, Army has one of the worst strength of schedules in the entire country. And so that's why you see them getting straight up disrespected by the committee and buried behind so many of these other teams. What would a head-to-head win against Notre Dame do in terms of vaulting them up in the rankings? Obviously, right now, we see that Boise State has an opportunity, not because of Boise State being in that little bye spot right now. The opportunity for Boise State that was revealed on Tuesday night was UNLV creeping up into that top 25. So you need the Rebels to be able to be a top 25 team in that Mountain West title game. But here comes Colorado State to mess things up, because I'll tell you what Boise State is not helped with is by beating a Colorado State team that is not up in the top 25. You're throwing all these scenarios at me, EC. I feel like you aren't even checking the conference standings first. Come on.
You're right. You need UNLV there. You really need Army to beat Notre Dame. But for me, it's going to be Big 12 champion. And I ultimately think it's going to be Colorado who's going to win out. And when you do that, they're going to be not only ranked higher than those teams, they're going to have the strength of schedule at that point, because part of the Big 12, while they're not a great conference overall, they're really log jammed in that rankings between, say, 20 and 45 in college football. And ultimately, I think that strength of schedule is enough. So for me, it will be the Big 12 champion.
Yeah, the higher ranked team, that's an easy answer. But to Chip's point, if Army beats Notre Dame and then comes back the following week and beats a ranked Tulane team, they're probably going to be ranked high. However, if Colorado continues to win and then wins the Big 12 championship game, we know at the end of the day, this is a TV product. So Colorado will probably be ranked higher. But man, you could have a situation where you get both Army, Colorado, and Boise State in the college football playoff, which would be great because it would be like every other playoff that we have in college football.